There has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Hi, my Veg Your Bestie. Hi, I'm on the road today, so everything's going to sound different. I recorded a little bit earlier in Glasgow, where I was, and we'll be talking about Glasgow mostly. I'm going to pretend that the first recording I did worked. I'm actually now in Chester with my husband, Chester, England. But we're going to try and recreate what I was trying to record earlier today. And apologies for the sound. And apologies to Charlie. Charlie, thanks for helping me with this. So I know there have been a lot of interviews the last few weeks. I know those are longer, and I know often you save those for when you've got the right amount of time to listen to them. But today we've got a lighter bite. It's just me. And, okay, I'm going to say I'm in Glasgow, even though I'm in Chester now. But I'm in Glasgow. Glasgow's the largest city in Scotland and the third largest in the United Kingdom, and it's a UNESCO City of Music. And I put it on our calendar months ago because I just wanted to take off with my husband for 10 days of exploring some places we haven't seen. And Glasgow, in addition to having a fascinating history and beautiful museums, most of which, it turns out, are free to the public and fabulously renovated and really well done in a way to, how would I say, in a way that makes the viewer understand the context of where these artworks and where these items and objects came from, how they got from across the world to Glasgow. And it's a very complicated city with a very interesting history, and I won't go on and on about it, but it also has a thriving live music scene, which is part of why we came. And it's a very vegan-friendly city. And that's pretty common in the UK, vegan friendliness. But it also has its own rich history of vegetarian and vegan culture, which has evolved over the past few decades. And I've been told that the roots of Glasgow's vegan scene go back to about the 1980s when the city's first, I believe it was called itself a vegetarian restaurant. It was called the 13th Note, and it was a situation, the 13th Note. It's a musical reference. It kind of becomes a theme in Glasgow. Thriving plant-based food culture mixed with music and performance. Because later on in the 90s and the early 2000s, there were other options with venues like Mono and Stereo. We ate at Mono yesterday. Delicious. And they not only became plant-based food hubs, they also became music and arts hubs. So I won't go on and on with the history of veganism or music in Glasgow, but there are lots. There's lots and lots of traditional music and new music and cover band music and all kinds of fun, lots of stores with vinyls, collecting vinyl albums. And so anyway, it's a great place to enjoy music and vegan food. And the Glasgow Climate Plan is another example of how Glasgow has set ambitious targets to achieve a net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It's kind of coming up. So anyway, Glasgow's commitment to plant-based living gained international recognition in 2013 when PETA named it the most vegan-friendly city in the UK. Well, there are a lot of very vegan-friendly cities in the UK, but I can totally attest that Glasgow's not only vegan-friendly, it is one of the friendliest places I've ever been. There are 3 universities there, there's a young population, and I'm sure that also has played a part in driving demand for plant-based options. So, as a traveler, one of the great gifts of travel is you get a chance to see your own country and your own choices differently. Because what's normal for you is not normal internationally or even regionally. Normal is not a term that is agreed upon in a wider context. Normality, that concept, it's not fixed. So exploring other places, even for a short period in a shallow way, can help you see things you haven't seen in your own life. Now, I've tried to be a traveler as much as possible my whole life, but I've been a vegan traveler now for about 10 years. And in that new context, I've noticed many different things. Just as throughout my life, my interests have focused my attention on things not everybody else would notice or care about. Just as your interests, when you travel, would mean you've got a lens focused differently, perhaps, than mine. Now, for example, regarding Glasgow, a fair few travelers to this area are very interested in the history of Scotch whiskey, which is, I guess it's more than a drink, it's more than a history of the science of distilleries. There are all sorts of cultural, agricultural, artistic, and economic stories wrapped up in the story of that iconic spirit. But it wasn't one that I really spent much time on this trip. So, we are always looking at the world through our own eyes, our own particular vision, our own particular story of how things work. And my thought this morning, as I record this, okay, it's actually dinner time and I'm re-recording it. But my thought this morning when I did record this is that especially in areas, in parts of your life where things are new, when you are new to some kind of new challenge, when you're changing or evolving some aspect of your life. Maybe you're navigating life with a partner now, or you're a solo person for the first time in a while. Maybe you're on a health journey or starting a new course of study, maybe a new job, starting a new business. When you're new, you often feel a lack of confidence about your choices and the way you express yourself, especially when you don't see a lot of others reflecting those new choices of yours, when you don't find others reinforcing or validating those choices. And this is something I call the tyranny of the normal. So you know, normal's not just one way, and you know that intellectually, you know that, but most of us feel like we don't fit in sometimes, especially when we're changing something up. We often feel that we're on the outs, or we've become the black sheep or an object of some notice or mockery, even if good-humored mockery. There aren't too many people I know who've moved in a vegan direction who have not been the subject of some at least gentle ribbing. That always happens when we do something revolutionary, right? Something revolutionary like changing. On the elevator this weekend at the hotel, a little boy walked in with his mother, maybe 3 or 4-year-old boy. The mother did what most of us do. She entered the elevator looking at us, and then she turned around to look at the door through which they had just entered. The little boy came in with her and just remained looking at the rest of us who were already in the elevator and had stepped back to make room. And it was adorable, and it made me think that I would have a different thought if that young one had been an adult. If an adult had walked in and didn't turn back around to the sliding doors and remained looking in my direction, I think I would have found that not normal. So, most of us, it's just a matter of seeing someone do things a bit differently that helps us to see our own choices. And I can't say that I ever thought so much about how I walk in and then turn around in an elevator. Now, I think there's still good reason for me to walk in and then turn around. But other times we might see a new choice and think, that's not exactly what I want to do. But the awareness, the seeing a different thing makes us remember that we are making choices all the time, even when we don't think that we're making choices. Now, all sorts of new choices have become standard in the world, and certainly standard in dining and in restaurants and with food since I was a child, or certainly since I was a young woman. And I know that making new choices, like requesting vegan options, can feel very awkward at first for most of us. But it's important to remember that many now very common dining practices were once, and I don't mean in the Middle Ages, and I don't mean in the Victorian period. I mean, in my lifetime, many now common dining practices were once very unusual. Now, soy milk, which is now almost passé as a plant-based milk, though it shouldn't be, because I think it's actually got a real, it's a really valuable plant-based milk, and it has quite a bit of protein, which some of the plant-based milks don't. Side digression. But soy milk is now standard, and it was once the only option for non-dairy and not always available. So now almond and oat milks are widespread as more and more people continue to request non-dairy alternatives. I remember when asking for salad dressing on the side was enough to have people look at you twice. But I can't think of a single restaurant or server anywhere who would raise an eyebrow now. It reflected, in many ways, for many of us, some issues, some concerns about our health consciousness and our weight. Another new-ish change to dining was bunless burgers. The practice of ordering burgers without buns, that got very popular with the low-carb diet phases. Very big in the 90s, and now also a pretty standard modification that no one would really think twice if you said, I'd like my burger without the bun. Or even if you asked for something whole grain. White bread, for sure, was the normal most of my early life. And now even at places like Applebee's, what are some standard Applebee's and Chili's, you can get things like cauliflower rice or zucchini noodles. I never even heard of those things until about 10 years ago. Things continue to change. Even I remember, even as a child, where somebody would ask to have their steak cooked to a certain degree of doneness, and that was considered unnecessarily fussy some places, that you would just take it the way you get it. And gluten-free, until very recently, that was completely unrealistic to assume someone could help you be gluten-free in most restaurants or hotels. And even now, I actually find that gluten-free and vegan are often confused. But anyway, it's certainly not unheard of, the idea of gluten-free. And now most restaurants at least try to accommodate requests for meals free of allergens like nuts, dairy, and eggs, or at least they'll advise you whether it's going to be possible with their menus. So just as these practices became, okay, maybe not universal, but they've certainly become pretty normal over time. Pretty normal. And vegan options are following a similar path, because the increasing demand is leading to more vegan menu items. Restaurants are becoming more accommodating to dietary restrictions and preferences. And in fact, many places, now the server actually asks the guest if there are any dietary issues or allergies or restrictions. Plant-based alternatives are definitely becoming more mainstream and widely available, so it's never going to be true everywhere and all the time. But if you're a new vegan or you are adopting a primarily whole food, plant-based diet, and it feels awkward or fussy, it feels uncomfortable asking the servers or the chef loads of questions, it's not weird that you feel that way. Because we've all been socialized to a certain set of behaviors that seem normal. And those deviations, they seem not normal. But if you have a reason, if you have a preference, if you have a request that feels hard to make, I think it's so important to get some practice with it. Preferably in low-stakes, friendlier environments, perhaps at first, but practice. Giving people the chance, practice giving people the opportunity to help you get what you want. So as we just went through, so many current dining norms were once considered highly unusual. And who remembers when sushi was absolutely bizarre for Americans? Vegan options are becoming more common, more accepted, but clear communication, that really helps. It really helps restaurant staff accommodate your needs, preparing ahead, looking at menus or calling restaurants in advance as a heads up to the chef. That makes it much easier for you to ask for things in a realistic way when you arrive. But the point is to help them to help you. Help them help you by being open to looking at the menu, combining side dishes, suggesting modifications to existing menu items. We think we know what normal is, but in our own lifetimes, we have so much evidence that the dining landscape, it's always been changing. It always will change because it reflects our thoughts about health, our thoughts about ethics and personal preferences. And vegan requests are just one of those changes in a very long line of dietary evolution. So if you're new to this lifestyle, I want you to feel much more confident, much more courageous, and yes, more normal about your choices. You're not just disrupting the status quo. We're part of an ongoing tradition of dining innovation and change. We don't just study history. We are history. So get out there and veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.